Come, sit by the fire. Let me tell you a story. Tales of wonder, tales of light and dark. There are all manner of stories here, for I am the arm.
A nice and reasonably priced house. Tom and Claire were a happily cohabitating couple. They had been together for 3 years, 3 happy years. They'd been living together for 2 years in a rented flat just above a corner shop on the high street. It was nice enough. Decent-sized bedroom, a bathroom that wasn't completely foul despite the odd choice of carpeted flooring and painted walls in lieu of tiles in the shower. A kitchen that was separate from the lounge. There was even a nice balcony that provided pretty good views of the sunset on hazy summer evenings. But despite their relative happiness, things needed to change. For one thing, Tom had proposed and Claire had accepted. It wasn't a fancy proposal. He didn't rope in multiple friends for some elaborate scheme that would be filmed for online viral approval. He simply took Claire for a walk on the beach that they had strolled on after their first date, stopped on the exact spot of their first kiss some 3 years before, dropped to one knee, said a few private, personal yet loving words and popped the question. Claire accepted with tears in her eyes and happiness in her heart. So, since now they were due to be married, the couple had decided to move house. It was time to get their feet on the property ladder. They both had good jobs. Claire was a primary school teacher. Tom was a managing supervisor of a mid-range construction firm specialising in council properties and jobs. They weren't extravagant jobs, but they paid all their bills, provided at least one holiday a year, and allowed a modest monthly sum to be put away for their next step in life. Tom and Claire were ready. It was time to begin a new chapter. They began their steps, researching online listings, contacting estate agents, but they came up short. There were properties everywhere, but none fit the bill. Too expensive, too dirty, too far away from their respective workplaces, behind a pub, on the outskirts of a derelict housing project. This search went on for months. The search went on until they discovered something on their daily evening dog walks. Every evening at 7:30 p.m, Tom and Claire would walk their dog Reggie around the neighbourhood. They would come down their flat stairs, out the door, down the high street, and through a number of residential roads until they reached a dog park about 15 minutes away from their flat. They had taken this route every day since they moved into the flat. When taking this route, as they reached the dog park, there is a large house on the corner of the road. It is flanked by a huge and beautiful garden. Hordes of trees and flowers grow uninterrupted. They had never paid much mind to the house as it had always been obscured by the overgrown garden. But as the couple began their nightly walk and reached the house, they saw something new. A for sale sign rising above the trees like a beacon calling out to them. "Look, that house is for sale," Claire said excitedly. Tom looked at the sign and then peered through the trees. "Oh, nice. I don't think I've ever seen anyone in this house before. Have you?" Claire shook her head as the pair paused at the garden wall. "Shall we have a look?" Claire said. Tom shook his head, uncertain. "Normally you book an appointment first." Claire laughed as she made her way back up the road to the house's front gate. "Come on, we aren't going to break in. Just a little look-see." Tom sighed and followed Claire. He never could say no to her. The couple led Reggie back up the path until they reached the front gate. To its left was the front driveway. It was empty, the large wooden gates flung open. Claire stepped onto the driveway to get a closer look. "Look, no car. Maybe it's someone's second home or something," she said, edging closer to the house. Tom stood at the edge of the driveway, surveying the house. All of the curtains were open, yet all the windows were closed. He could see no signs of life. Weird, Tom thought. Let's get a closer look, Claire said, already pacing around the side of the house. Tom followed, looking in every window for a sign of a person. There was none. Edging around the house, they entered the garden. It was gorgeous. A light concrete tile path led winding round the garden. There was a small fountain spurting water up in the air every 10 seconds. A collection of flower beds in full bloom. Even an unoccupied greenhouse. Claire was ecstatic with what she saw. She turned to Tom. "We need to call the estate agent for this property pronto." Tom held up his hands, accidentally letting go of Reggie's lead, who wandered over to a back door. Now, we haven't even seen inside. I know you love a nice garden. God knows we've been deprived of one, but let's not be hasty. Claire was having none of it. "I'm going to go look at the sign and get the number." Claire rushed back up the garden path and out onto the street. Tom turned to Reggie, who was sniffing fervently at the back door. Tom clicked his fingers. "Come on, Reg, your mother's going loco. Let's go." Reggie stayed at the door, sniffing until breaking out into furious barks. "Hey, shh!" Tom said, rushing over to the dog. Grabbing the lead, he pulled at Reggie, dragging him up the path to the driveway. "Stupid dog," Tom muttered as he stepped out onto the road. Claire was tapping quickly on her phone when he found her. "We've got a viewing tomorrow morning," she said, beaming. Tom was shocked. "What? It's the evening? How did you get a response so quickly?" Claire shrugged. "They must be motivated to sell. See? Look at the sign." Claire pointed up at the sign and Tom followed her gesture. "A nice and reasonably priced house. Brackets? Perfect for first-time buyers," Claire shouted excitedly. Tom was confused. He had never seen a for sale sign with that kind of message. Claire was too excited to notice, however. For the rest of the walk, she talked non-stop about the house. Even when they returned home and went to bed, she couldn't stop imagining all the things they could do with a house like that. A garden like that. They could actually have a life. A good one, too. The next morning, Tom and Claire waited outside the house, this time without Reggie. Claire was still excited, chattering away about the house, but Tom was silent. He smoked a cigarette quietly, looking up at the house. Something was wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Before he could dwell any longer, a sleek black Audi A4 pulled up alongside the couple. The door opened, and a swaggering, tall and handsome man in aviator shades stepped out. "Hey guys, here for the house viewing, yeah?" Claire nodded and shoved a hand forward. "Yes, that's us. I'm Claire and this is my fiancé Tom." "Ooh, it's the first time I've said that out loud." Claire giggled as she shook the slick man's hand. "Newly engaged? Congrats to you both. Now, I'm Christopher, alright? I'm the agent representing the house. Hopefully, we can make this a very special time for you both, yeah? Engagement and a house? Not too bad if you ask me." Claire nodded excitedly as Tom shook Christopher's hand. "So, this place been on the market long, do you know?" Christopher grinned back at Tom with a perfect white set of teeth. "Oh yeah, long time. Just been waiting for the right people. Or, couple, right? Am I right?" Claire laughed. "I hope so." Christopher slapped his hands together and rubbed them as if to light a fire. "Well then, shall we, have a butcher's?" Without waiting for an answer, he strode past the couple, leaving a trail of sweet-smelling aftershave like an airstream behind him. "Come on, Tom," Claire shouted, following Christopher. Tom took one last puff of his cigarette before flicking it into the street and slowly followed. Christopher opened the door to the house and stepped aside to allow the couple to enter. "Well, here it is." By all accounts, it was a beautiful house. It almost seemed like they had entered a different atmosphere the second their feet hit the wooden floor inside. While the street had been slightly chilly with the morning breeze, somehow the inside of the house felt like it was late afternoon. The air had been warmed by a day of sunshine, allowing the room to feel hazy and comfortable. There was a thick rug lining the carpet that led through to a wonderfully cozy dining room/lounge. A wooden table placed by a pair of French glass doors looked out in the garden, while a large sofa with a legion of pillows and throw blankets tucked away in the opposite wall by the fireplace. Across the other side of the hallway was the kitchen, a wonderfully old-school kitchen with brickwork walls, a cast-iron Aga oven and hob setup. Across from that, a marble kitchen island, adorned with fresh flowers and a heaving bowl of fruit. Tom was struck by this. He thought Christopher had said the house had been unoccupied for a long time. He turned to question this, in time to see Christopher leading Claire up the stairs down the hall. Tom followed up the handcrafted wooden stairs that uttered not a single creak despite their age. The upstairs opened up to reveal 4 separate rooms. Immediately adjacent to the stairs was the bathroom, a large and clean room with tiled floor, a huge bath, and what could only be described as a shower big enough to fit an entire family in it. On the other wall, a his and hers set of sinks with their own mirrors and cupboards. Across the landing were 2 bedrooms, one smaller with a large double bed, desk, cupboard, and window looking down into the garden. The other, the master bedroom, and master it was, a queen-size bed next to floor-to-ceiling windows. Just outside it, a balcony with 2 large cushioned chairs and a table, a view of the garden as well as the town's church in the distance. Tucked into the corner was a full-sized walk-in wardrobe. Claire was almost in tears. Next door to the master bedroom was an office. A desk placed up against the window allowed full view of the street below. The internet router was strategically placed on the desk for straight to Ethernet connection, and there was more than enough room to set up the most functional office space imaginable. The house was perfect. Even Tom couldn't deny that with his skepticism. Claire was stunned beyond words. Christopher smiled as he motioned for the couple to follow him down the stairs. They made their way down, and Christopher opened the front door and ushered them outside. He closed the door to the house and turned to the couple. "Well, what do we think?" Tom and Claire looked at one another. No words needed. Claire smiled at Christopher. It's amazing. We'd love to make an offer. We'd need to contact the bank, but..." Claire trailed off as she realised Christopher was laughing. Tom frowned. "What's so funny?" Christopher laughed and laughed as he placed a hand on the front door. Sorry. It's just the signs never actually worked, you know, since it's so ridiculous." Claire and Tom looked at each other confused, then back to Christopher. "What about the sign?" Christopher pushed the front door. The house collapsed like a house of cards. It folded in on itself, consuming its contents, folding, endlessly folding, until there was nothing but a patch of concrete, surrounded by an overgrown garden. There's no such thing as a nice, reasonably priced house, especially for first-time buyers. Christopher cackled as he walked back to his Audi A4, got in, and drove off. Claire and Tom sighed and made their way home. To be honest, they should have known better. I mean, in this economy? Come on. After all this time. From Michael B. at sottonuni.ac.uk to Lisa D. at sottonuni.ac.uk. Date May 27th, 2019. Subject After all this time. Dear Lisa, it feels weird to start a communication with you so formally considering our history. But so much time has passed since we last saw or spoke to one another that anything else would feel like I was crossing a line, forgetting everything that has happened between us. I'm sending this to you through our old university email accounts. I don't know if they're still active. I guess I'll know once I send it and I receive a bounce back reply from the university servers. But I can't send it any other way. I long since deleted your number, and we never had our regular emails way back when. So, into the university email it goes. It's funny, before I even considered writing this, I actually went back and read through our old correspondence. Those little joke emails we sent during our first year we were together, forwarding jokes about the various society emails from the Rock Sock after we foolishly signed up to their email list that drunken night in the dungeon on Beauvoir Place. Did you know they shut the dungeon down a couple months after we graduated? Well, after I graduated anyway. You had that 1 year solo after spending that torrid, your words, year in Italy. I'll be honest, it felt weird on graduation day. I'd always pictured us doing it together, strolling up onto the stage, me getting a barely passed degree in English, and you with your first in multiple languages, our mums crying like they always did at the drop of a hat in the audience. Instead, I sat alone on a come-down that could have killed a horse, and spent the entire day in such a daze when it was over, I scarcely remembered it had happened at all. Over the next year I often wondered what it was like for you to be there in that city without me. I mean, probably not much different. We broke up at the end of the first year and spent more time apart than together. But did it feel strange? To walk those streets and those halls on campus, not having to wonder or worry if you might spot me with Amy? Even when I knew you were in a different country, I still found myself looking for you everywhere. Did you too? A long time ago you wrote me a letter that stated on the outside that you couldn't finish it because you didn't think you wanted to or even knew how. So after all these years of waiting, not knowing what to say, I guess this is my reply to that letter. In case you forgot, you gave me the letter the final night we saw each other, some 4 years after we broke up outside Dan's house on Easter break, and 4 years ago from today as I write this. Wow, where to begin? The other night was incredible in so many ways. It felt so fucking nice to be talking with you again, and I mean really talking, the way we used to. I have to apologise because I felt like I was pretty incoherent and quiet compared to you. I think I was just overwhelmed by the fact that we were actually in the same place together longer than 5 minutes. I had something in mind when I was originally writing this, but since we talked, it kind of stripped away any and all thoughts I had in place. I was pretty emotionally and mentally blown away after I said goodnight, and it didn't end until about now, 2 days later. Hearing about your life now is pretty fucking incredible. It sounds so much like what you always told me you wanted it to be, and that makes me really happy to think of you living the way you want. But when you told me about the way you feel about me and us, I was pretty shocked. I mean, in many ways, a lot of what you told me I had always thought was so, like the predominant reason you ended things. I would have been pretty stupid to think that it wasn't the reason. But the things you said about me, and what me being a stupid arsehole did, / affected you since, was truly heartbreaking to hear. I am truly sorry for how that went down, and the idea of me causing you to have a loss of faith in humanity when you loved and trusted me so much is truly soul-shattering. But that's something I deserve and will have to live with. I could spend 20 pages of this trying to either explain or analyse why I did the things I did towards the end of our relationship, but I think delving that deep into that void would be too shitty for both of us. So I guess the simplest explanation is the best, even though it sounds like the most stupid, although I trust that you believe me when I tell you it's the truth. Once we got to university, and I started to realise and know that we would eventually break up because you wanted to experience the freedom you never really got whilst back in home with your parents, I freaked out. And right at that time of that freak out / realisation, for the first time in my life, someone confronted me with the fact that they had feelings for me. So, being in such a mindfuck of a mental position, I guess I got the stupid, asinine thought process of, well, if we're going to break up anyway, and someone else easily developed feelings for me, I guess this is what life and relationships are like at this age. Transient and easily transferable. Obviously, that was the complete opposite of how I should have dealt with the situation. It wasn't what you ever deserved or what our relationship deserved. Because we were, / still are in many ways, fucking perfect for each other. We cared and felt and loved so deeply for one another. Every day was great because we had each other no matter what bullshit was occurring around us. We went out of our ways to do lovely little cute things for one another, just to make sure they were comfortable and felt loved and appreciated. And as you said the other night, we were each other's paramount example of what is good about other people. You never changed being that for me, but I did for you. I let you down. Worse even, I hurt you in every way I promised I never would. Now, with all this being said, I'm not saying if I hadn't made the mistakes I did, we would have stayed together. Like you said, you need the freedom you have now, and you deserve to explore that in all the different ways you can imagine. And in all honesty, I definitely needed time to sort myself out. Well, still do, both mentally, physically, and just in terms of what I'm doing with my fucking life. So before I begin rambling, I guess my last thing is, despite all the shit that we've been through, still feels amazing to be with you, to talk to you, to smoke with you, to feel your presence. Ever since we broke up, despite our best efforts, we seem to always circle back to one another in times of stress, when we're happy, when we're feeling angsty as fuck. So I guess what I'm saying is I hope that the right person, wrong time theory we floated ages ago is something that could occur at some point in the future when we circle back to one another like we always seem to. I think there's more matured, experienced versions in our futures that could be even better than our younger selves. Like you said the other night, I don't ever want to stop talking to you. Ever. So I guess this is a dialogue that could span years. Jesus, I hope this hasn't been too rambly. If so, just shoot me an email and tell me how much of a dickhead I am. I wrote that letter 2 days after you gave me yours. I never gave it to you. By then, you had returned to the city, and I was back home. It didn't feel right. Well, that's not true. It would have felt right, but I was too much of a coward to say anything then. Even reading through it now, I feel scared. Not because I expect it to change anything. Hell, I wouldn't want it to. It's almost been a decade. I'm certainly not who I was back then, and despite the silence between us over this gulf of years, I know that you won't be the same either. And that's okay. Because we shouldn't be. We were fucking teenagers. Kids. When I read through that original letter I just sent you, I laugh at how profound I thought I sounded. That somehow, at 22, I'd figured it all out at long last. Solved the mystery of the death of first love. There never was any mystery. I was a dumb fucking teenager with a tentative grasp on reality and a burgeoning alcohol problem. Truth of the matter was, we were a couple of kids who made the stupid decision kids always make when they fall in love for the first time. We thought it would be the only time it would ever happen for us. The only time we ever needed it to happen for us. How fucking stupid is that? I think it's because our brains have never felt that delicate yet potent cocktail of chemicals before. It's like when you try a new drug for the first time. Its new rushes and sensations eclipse anything you've ever done before, and you think you'll never feel anything like it again. Anything and everything that follows will just pale in comparison. But once again, it's not true. It's almost been a decade since I last felt the love I felt for you, but since then there's been a deluge of other types of love and feeling. carnal and uncontrollable lust that lasted one sweat and alcohol-soaked night, deep months-long pining for a co-worker, a solid and dependable year of mutual yet not intense companionship. All of them the same, but all of them different. I still dream about you. Not every night, obviously. But every couple of months you'll wander into the forefront of my subconscious mind. Usually I dream lucidly, and I can control what I see and do. But whenever you appear, all of that control disappears like smoke on a windy morning. Don't worry, nothing creepy ever happens. We don't engage each other physically or anything, don't even kiss. We just talk. It's strange, almost in a way it's like I'm actually talking to the real you. They say the brain can't imagine any new information when dreaming. It's just the careful reordering and restructuring of old information, presented in new ways. But you tell me things about you that I don't know, that I couldn't know. And weirdly, you remember things I told you in previous dreams. I mean, that could just be me remembering that I told you. I don't know. I'll never understand it. Sometimes I've considered emailing you to tell you about these dreams, to inquire as to whether you saw me too in the depths of sleep that night. But I'm well aware of how mental that sounds. In that letter I wrote you all those years ago that you only just read, I told you that I never wanted to stop talking to you, echoing your sentiment from the night before as we sat in our old college spot in the woods outside your house. And yet, we did. I often wondered that perhaps the very act of verbalizing it signalled its end. Once you say something out loud, whatever thought or feeling that birthed it and stayed latched in your mind no longer lived there. It was freed, set loose out into the world, no longer a burden weighing you down. But now, I think it's just the way it goes, you know? The mistake people always make is thinking that everything needs to last forever. Otherwise, what was it for? Anything that doesn't stand the test of time loses all meaning. It was a waste, a mistake, a misstep on the path to the right thing. Can't it just be what it is? We forgot. We forgot because we didn't need to remember anymore. Sure, a flash of memory here and there. Hear that Otis Redding song in a coffee shop that we used to listen to when we woke up in the mornings at your mum's house. And you smile and turn back to your chai latte. Someone suggests taking a walk down Grove Path when we took MDMA for the first time and became obsessed with the way a leaf looked. Or anything, for that matter. Even just the way a friend hugs you for a moment longer than a friend usually does. The weight of their body against you, reminding you of those who came before. Anyway, I think I'm just rambling at this point. Even now, that's something I still do. I didn't finally send that letter to you just to add a whole other mess of words and feelings on top and muddy the waters. I guess it was just supposed to be an epilogue. A line drawn under a chapter in my life that I thought had ended years ago, but I'd actually left the covers of the book open. But today's the time to close them. I chose an email because I can't come tomorrow. I can't watch them say goodbye to you. I can't look at Chris and Cheryl as they give their speeches about the school and college days. I can't face a shaking hug from your mum as she tells me she missed me after all these years. I can't face the long walk from the service to the cemetery. And I can't see you go in the ground. I know, there's that cowardice again. But this is the only way I can do it. Typing the words into an email, into an old account at a university I haven't attended in half a decade. As I write this now, I see your face laughing at me the way it used to when I was being dumb. A big, wide smile that showed off your teeth and made you seem like you were up to something. I hope that if you're somewhere else now, and some way you see this, you can forgive me. Because I really want to be able to forgive myself. I don't know if that's something I deserve, but you were always a nicer person than me. You wouldn't waste a second telling me that I do deserve it. I'll be going now. I'm going to listen to Otis Redding and smoke a joint. I haven't in quite some years, so it'll probably spin me out. Maybe it will so much that I can pull out of those dreams I have of you, and we can talk about this in person. More than likely, I'll just have a panic attack and need to take a long walk. Either way, if I do ever see you again, I can finally hear your response to that long overdue letter. After all this time, it'd be nice to just talk. With love unshaken, Michael.